Commission on September the 28th, 2022. Mr. Feinstein, may we please have the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Paul,
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Greavy,
Here.
Commissioner Werblin,
Present.
Commissioner Evans
She's walking in right now.
is coming in as we speak. We'll note Commissioner Evans is present. Commissioner Matthews,
Present.
Commissioner Cruzen is absent this evening. Commissioner Childs,
Present. Commissioner Paul, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Information on providing public comments. Persons wishing to address the Planning Commission on subjects not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, provided that no action may be taken on off-agenda items except as authorized by law. Off-agenda items from the public will be taken under consideration without discussion by the Commission and may be referred to staff. Comments will be accepted in person or via Zoom. Public comment instructions. To speak on an agenda item in person, please complete a speaker's card and give it to the secretary before the meeting or at the latest prior to the time for public comments on that item. When joining via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 on your phone to request to speak. You will be called on by name and will have 3 minutes to speak. Approval of the agenda. Next is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
there are not.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda for September 14th, 2022.
Is there a second?
I do second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as submitted. We will vote by roll call. Mr. Feinstein, will you conduct the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Paul,
So,
Commissioner
yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Greavy,
Yes.
Commissioner Werblin,
Yay.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews,
Approve.
Commissioner Cruzen is absent, and Commissioner Childs.
Yes. Next is the approval of the minutes for the September 14th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Not from staff.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes for September 14th, 2022.
Is there a second?
I do second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as submitted. Mr. Feinstein, will you conduct the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Paul,
Yes,
Commissioner Greavy,
Yes.
Commissioner Werblin,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews,
Yes.
Commissioner Cruzen is absent, Commissioner Childs.
Yes. Okay.
Chairperson Childs,
Yes.
may I make a comment? I actually said at the beginning the approval of the minutes from September 14th, and I think that was supposed to be the agenda. Did I do that incorrectly, sir?
Let's see.
So the first item that we voted on was the agenda. The second item
For
was the
tonight.
minutes.
Yes.
I think on the agenda, I actually said minutes instead of the word
Okay.
agenda. So I
Okay.
just want to make, for the record,
So we'll note that change, yes.
my
Thank you.
apologies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you moved to approve the agenda. And that's the first vote that we took tonight was for the agenda. Yes,
Okay.
okay. we've noted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now on to public comments. This is the time for the public to speak on items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. I will now open the public comment period. And I see that I have a couple of speaker cards for public comment.
We have one card for the public comment period, and we have one card actually for a following agenda item.
Okay.
So
And so
one-
my
one
one
card right
public
now.
comment is for Nora Martinez, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I have been privileged to attend several of the city council meetings, and it has come to my attention that we have a lot of homeless who are camped on commercial properties, under the freeways, and so on. And it has been mentioned that a lot of the funding that was supposed to house the homeless in fair housing and decent housing, not shelter. Shelter, Inc. is not a decent place. My question is, what is the zoning commission or the planning commission doing for preserving open spaces, safe spaces for agricultural use, which now the homeless squat in, and other beautification project of Fairfield, like Travis Air Force Base, some of the houses, could the homeless perhaps, substandard housing, My question to the planning commission is, don't you think homelessness is affecting the quality of life of everyone in Fairfield, regarding whether they're billionaires, trillionaires, or multimillionaires, or just like me? I'm a military widow existing on very low, unlivable Social Security. Now, it has come to my attention also that people on their own are using single-family dwellings sort of like a shelter to bunch in 20 or 30 people. But the zoning is for a single-family dwelling, perhaps. The traditional would be like Leave It to Beaver with the white picket fence and a woman wearing an apron chained to the stove, which of course, nobody does anymore. All the women are empowered. They want big jobs with big titles, not me, thank you. So the point is, I see the city of Fairfield with their planning and use of environmentally safe project going the wrong direction. Number one, a lot of people in here are not from Fairfield. They're given a bus ticket and told, well, go to Fairfield, because they don't care. You can lay in wherever you want. You lay out here. You can open your door in the duck pond. And in my opinion, there has to be some kind of planning or for living. These people aren't living. You can't live like that. I've lived like that, but you can't. It's just not human. It's a violation of human rights, and then people are now saying, they want audits of the funds that they're getting.
Yes, Nora, you have about 15 seconds,
going
please.
to fund the city if these situations are not corrected, because they're human rights violations for minority, Indian people, Arab people, they can't live like that, So thank you for letting me say so. I'm just making you notice you could be fined. Yeah, I hate to see the governor put in millions of dollars, but maybe you all should be fined. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your feedback, Nora. Close the public comment. I will now close the public comment period. The next item on the agenda is scheduled matters. For each itemized item, there will be a presentation by city staff. For items that involve application requests, I will then ask the applicant to address the commission if they so desire. Then I will open the comment period via Zoom and in-house. I will close the comment period after all comments have been provided and after all our questions regarding the testimony during the comment period have been answered. After the comment period is closed, the commission will deliberate on the item and may have additional questions for staff. We cannot take additional testimony or questions from the public after the comment period is closed. And so our first item has to do with Sunset Avenue Apartments.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Planning Commissioners. Tonight I will be presenting a collection of requests as part of the Sunset Avenue Apartments project. The requests include an annexation, zone change, development review, and environmental review. The site is 8.71 acres of land at the southeast corner of Sunset Avenue and East Tabor Avenue. The site is largely characterized as undeveloped land, a relic channel with seasonal wetlands and vegetation. The southernmost portion of the site includes a vacant single-family residence, concrete slab, asphalt, a well, and a collection of trees that will be demolished as part of the project. The portion of the site at the southern end of the parcel, or the project site, is 2.82 acres of land and currently under the jurisdiction of Solano County, but will be annexed into the city of Fairfield with the project. The 3 parcels of land that comprise the project site would be combined into a single parcel as a separate lot merger at the city staff level. This map and the previous slide identify the location of the site within the context of the surrounding area. The site is bounded by East Tabor Avenue to the north, Sunset Avenue to the west, and the Laurel Creek Flood Control Channel to the east. There are a collection of existing developments that surround the site, including multifamily residential and an office to the north, multifamily and single-family residential to the west, single-family residences to the south, and Grange Middle School to the east. Single-family residential and multifamily residential are the predominant land uses in the vicinity. The 2 northernmost parcels are zoned RM, Residential Medium Density District, and the southernmost parcel has a pre-zoning designation of RLM, Residential Low Medium Density District. All the project parcels have a general plan designation of residential medium density. Areas with this designation typically include attached residential units, such as duets, townhomes, row houses, condos, and apartments, at a density of 8 to 15 units per acre. To facilitate the proposed multi-family residential development, City Council approval of a zone change would be required for the southernmost parcel from RLM district to RM district. The Planning Commission serves as an advisory body to the City Council for such actions as a zone change. The required findings to recommend City Council approval of the zone change is presented in both the resolution and the ordinance in your packet. Oops. The project involves the development of 130 apartments. The apartments will be sited within 26 residential buildings and include 90 2-bedroom units and 40 3-bedroom units. 2-story buildings are identified on the site plan using orange and yellow and sited along both street frontages and near the single-family residences to the south. 3-story buildings are identified on the site plan using purple and are sited within the interior of the project site and along Laurel Creek to the east. The leasing building and major amenities, including a lounge, fitness center, pool and spa, play structure, and large patio area, are also sited near Laurel Creek to the east. The site is accessible from a principal driveway on Sunset Avenue with emergency vehicle access on East Tabor Avenue. 296 vehicle parking spaces will be provided as part of the project. Each of the units will have 2-car garage spaces, and there will be a total of 36 parking spaces for guests, and those are uncovered. Heavy landscaping is provided around and within the project site. There will be a landscaped detention basin at the southeast corner of the project site and near Laurel Creek Channel, and on the site plan in front of you, that's the green triangle near the top of the slide. Tubular steel fencing will be provided along both street frontages and Laurel Creek to enclose the site entirely. Building B4 will contain 4 units and have a height of 29 feet at 2 stories. The main elevation, which is depicted in this slide, will face Sunset Avenue, East Tabor, and Laurel Creek, as well as the interior areas of the site. All of the buildings will employ a variety of materials and elements and contemporary or complementary colors to create a high-quality project design. The project presents a contemporary representation of the architectural style typically known as Spanish colonial architecture. Architectural elements typical of this style include roof tiles, stucco, wood fascia, beams, trim corbels, hood vents, recessed grills, decorative braces, window and door trim elements, decorative tiles, as well as metal railings, louvers, and gates. The rear and side elevations for building B4 are presented in this slide. You'll note at the bottom of this slide is the garage doors for the rear garage elevation or entryway. Building B6 will contain 6 units and have a height of 29 feet at 2 stories. The main elevation for this building is depicted in the slide. Similar to the previous building that I presented, this building will also face Sunset Avenue, East Tabor, Laurel Creek, as well as some interior portions of the project site. And this slide presents the rear and side elevations for building B6. So the 3-story buildings are identified as B4T. They'll contain 4 units and have a height of 35 feet. The main elevation is depicted in this slide. This building will face Laurel Creek, but will also face the interior portions of the project site. So this building is the purple that you saw in the site plan. This slide presents rear and side elevations for B4T. And moving right along, this is building B6T. This building will contain 6 units and also have a height of 35 feet. It's a 3-story building. The slide in front of you presents the main elevation. As I mentioned, the orientation would be facing Laurel Creek, as well as the interior areas of the project site. And this also presents the rear and side elevations for building B6T. And the last building that I'm going to present to you is the leasing building. This building will have a height of 18 feet. It will be a single-story building. The main elevation will face the driveway entrance. So you'll see this building as you're coming into the project site from Sunset Avenue, and that main elevation is presented at the bottom of the slide. The rear and side elevations for the leasing building are presented at the left side and top of the slide here. Following a review of the project, staff prepared an initial study to analyze potential significant impacts under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The initial study did identify biological resources, cultural resources, noise, transportation, and tribal cultural resources as potential significant impacts. However, each of these potential significant impacts can be mitigated or reduced to an insignificant level through the implementation of the mitigated negative declaration. And I do want to note that the environmental document is included as part of your packet. Staff has received letters from 2 state agencies, the Department of Toxic Substances Control and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, with recommendations for the environmental document. We will modify the environmental document as needed prior to City Council adoption, since the City Council would be the body that would be taking action on this environmental document. Copies of both letters are available on the dais. Staff recommends that the Commission adopt Resolution 22-10 This would grant approval of the development review, that's DR 2021-017. This resolution would recommend City Council approval of the annexation, that's ANX 2021-002, and zone change ZC 2021-006. Lastly, this resolution would recommend City Council adoption of the environmental document, and that's ER 2021-039. There is one change to the resolution that I want to highlight for the commission. The resolution inadvertently referred to the annexation area, which was the southernmost parcel, as annexation area I, when it actually is annexation area H. In the municipal services review document, the resolution has been changed to reflect this correction should the commission approve the project this evening. I just wanted to state that for the record. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission has. I also want to note that members of the applicant team are present in the chamber and are also available to answer questions. Thank you.
Commissioners?
I have a couple of questions. Jonathan, first of all, thanks for your professional presentation. Would you mind going to the slide that shows the zoning? Yes. So this development is about 15 units per acre, correct?
Correct.
Remind us, what is RLM? What capacity can you, how dense can you build there?
RLM is typically associated with single-family residences. It allows a density of up to 8 units an acre.
Okay, but then everything else is RM?
That's
which
correct.
You can go 30?
So RM, residential medium density, allows a density range of 8 units to 15 units an acre. So the minimum is 8 units an acre, the maximum
Okay, so
15.
the only issue here is the RLM portion of this.
That's correct.
Everything else, we're slightly under 15, so it would be compliant with that, correct?
That's correct. And
Okay.
I do want to note that the parcel that is RLM has a pre-zoning designation. So that is the parcel that would be annexed into the city.
Right.
Currently, it's
Okay.
under the jurisdiction of Solano County.
And then the height within RM, 3 stories, how high is this project?
This project is 3 stories at approximately 35 feet.
About 35 feet?
Yes.
And what is permitted in RM?
RM and RLM permit 35 feet.
Okay.
Yes.
And then would you go to the one where you show the overall development as a yes, that one. So the south side by the residential development?
Yes.
You mentioned fencing, but talk to us more about that area, and will there be some kind of privacy wall in addition to whatever fencing may be in other areas of this?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the single-family residence is to the south. Currently, there is a wood fence. The project would involve the construction of a concrete block wall. There's a condition in your packet that indicates that the minimum height would need to be at least 6 feet to be comparable to what's being replaced.
Yeah, I wonder if 6 feet is high enough. What are those the duets right there? What will the height of those projects be on the south side?
So the orange and yellow that you see on the site plan, those are that's the 2-story buildings. So those would be 29 feet in height. I did want to note, in addition to the concrete block wall, there will be a collection of trees that will also
Right.
provide a buffer between the 2 developments.
Yeah, okay. I have concerns about the height of the wall, but thank you again, and that's all my questions.
have a couple of questions. On the 2-story and 3-story buildings, is this apartments on each floor, or is this one apartment that's 2 levels and then another apartment that's tri-level?
Great question, and it's the latter. So for the 2-story buildings, there'll be 2-story apartments. For the 3-story buildings, there'll be 3 stories, with the bottom level partially being for the rear-loaded garage and small living space on the ground floor.
And those, and probably the applicant can answer that, or you can, those are the 3 bedrooms, I assume?
Yeah, they'll either be 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom.
Okay. And then I also, and I think you answered it, had some questions about the wall. I just recall our previous commission meeting, and there was some concerns, not for this project, but for another project regarding the builder and the wall, and what exactly is that going to look like? And is that a mandate within, if the commission approves this, is that mandatory that that wall is constructed, and it's not something that the applicant can refuse to do at a later point post-approval if this project is approved?
Yeah, so the wall is included as part of the project. We've added a condition that the height be a minimum of 6 feet. When this project, when it comes through for building plan check, that's something that we would be looking for as part of our plan check. Do these plans that are coming in for a building permit, do they meet are they consistent with the approval? And if not, then that'd be a comment to note. But yeah, the project would need to include that wall before occupancy.
Thank you.
Quick question, what's the timeline for this project? When will it start and when will it be completed?
I think that's a great question. I'm going to defer to Brent Little, who is here representing the development team.
Gotcha, okay.
I have questions. I love your maps. They're great.
Oh,
Giving me
thanks.
a great visual here. I think my concern is also on the south end as well, because I'm seeing, the single-family homes here, and I'm wondering, is this their front yard or their backyard? Because I'm just concerned about if we go up too high, like how that's going to disturb their view, or, just the shading and such,
Yeah, so I just wanted to note a few things. To answer your question, the backyards for these single-family residences abut this project site. So
Okay.
What you're seeing is the rear yard touching the southern property line. As far as concerns with privacy goes, I will note that the height for this zone is the same as the height maximum for the single-family residences.
Okay. And I'm just curious if the residents have been informed already that this project is being proposed, or is that something that's going to happen later?
So as part of the requirement for this project, and anytime we have a public hearing, we do send out public hearing notices to all property owners within a 500-foot radius. We publish public hearing notice in the Daily Republic. Have not received any comments from any of the folks that own or occupy these single-family residences.
And just to clarify, the notice goes out, does it go out only in the Daily Republic, or are they direct mailed to the folks in the radius?
They're directly mailed.
Okay, awesome. And the aesthetic fits in with the other apartments in the area, because I know a little further up Sunset, there are I believe 2 apartment units, and I'm just wondering if it has, because this is a different type of look, the Spanish colonial style. I like it, but I'm just wondering how that kind of fits in with the rest of the neighborhood.
I would say that it fits, it fits the zoning development standards, so that's a good starting place. If it meets all the development standards, but as far as the architectural style goes, I think it's a high-quality design. I think to some degree we want a level of architectural diversity instead of everything looking cookie cutter and looking exactly like, the previous development.
Okay,
I would say it complements the area.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I got a question. On the one side, we see it's the Sunset Avenue, and on the other side, we see Laurel Creek Channel. So I was wondering what kind of boundary wall is being proposed to the side of the Laurel Creek, so that in case it floods, and what kind of protection all the inhabitants going to have?
Sorry, are you asking what types of improvements will be proposed adjacent to Laurel Creek?
Yes. So what kind of boundary wall? I mean, it's going to be concrete, and what's the height of the foundation from the creek all these apartments going to have?
You're asking the elevation of the foundation. That might be a question that I want to defer to. We have the project engineer present in case any engineering questions come up. But what I will say though is you'll note that there is a detention basin at the southeast corner of this project site. That's actually the green triangular area to the top of the slide. So any water that runs off from this particular development would be directed into a bio detention area to prevent any stormwater pollution from entering the adjacent area, the Laurel Creek.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll also note that there's a condition in the Public Works conditions attached to your resolution that requires that the finished floor for all the buildings be at least 1 foot above the 100-year flood level. So we do require that it be out of the most likely flood zone.
Any other comments, commissioners?
I do have a couple other questions. Just to confirm with the notice for the residents, is that sent to the owner of the property or the resident or both?
It's to the owner. It's that's a requirement that's very standard and typical of several jurisdictions in California, including this one.
So just the owner, but not the occupant?
That's correct.
That's correct. And then, I forgot my second question, but another one came up. Is there any conversation with the school districts when we have new developments like this that can impact the school? That they
Yes.
can have increased enrollment and how they can prepare?
Yes, there is, and sorry to interject as you were still asking your question. So when we receive an application, we route the application to not only a collection of city departments and divisions, but we also route projects to outside agencies. For residential projects, we do route to the school district. In this case, it's Fairfield Sassoon School District. So this project was routed to them. They collect a development impact fee. So they collect a fee from this development, and they are to provide the capacity and the facilities to accommodate any growth from these residential projects.
Thank you. I remember my question. It was about the wall, the 6 feet. Is the 6 feet something that the city proposed or the developer proposed? How do we get that number that we think 6 feet is sufficient?
So the project plans actually included a proposed height of 5 feet. So there was a special condition added to raise the height to 6 feet so that there wouldn't be a stark difference between what is currently there and what is being proposed. So going from a 6 foot tall wood fence to a 5 foot tall block wall, in my professional opinion, I thought was not a good trade-off. So that's where that condition came from, to bump the height to at least 6 feet.
And that's cement type wall that's going to be constructed?
Pardon?
Was it cement?
Yes, it is a concrete block wall.
Concrete.
It'd be comparable to the concrete block walls that you see along Sunset Avenue.
Thank you.
Talk to us about the finish of the concrete block wall. Will it be painted? Will it just be natural finish? What is that?
If I'm not mistaken, and I could double check the plans that I have here, it would be painted to match the existing color on Sunset Avenue. So right now you see like a beige, like terracotta colored wall. That was my recollection, and I'll confirm right here.
Yeah, and I'll note that the city's standard height for block walls is 6 feet unless there is a noise, unless there's a particular noise issue that's requiring it to be taller. Typically, the noise issues that require it to be taller is where you have a street, traffic going by, but otherwise, the city's standard default height for walls is 6 feet.
Okay,
I'm just, oh, go ahead.
So on Walters, I believe, and maybe it's because of traffic, I don't know, but I suspect that the wall there is substantially more than 6 feet.
That is correct. And one thing you'll note about Walters is the speed limit is a lot higher on Walters Road than East Tabor and Sunset Avenue. So, and I don't want to speak to any specifics on a past project, but that wall may have been, the height of that wall may have been determined by like a sound study or noise study that says, hey, because the traffic noise is a certain level, you need a wall to mitigate, potential noise impacts on the residents.
I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think that everyone's concern perhaps is the present residents that are there, they're now going to have a 3-story building or a 2-story building looking directly down into their property that wasn't there before. And so it's just a privacy issue, I think, is probably what we're mostly concerned about.
I'm happy to speak to that. So a few things I want to note, and this is somebody who lives in a single-family home near apartments. Oftentimes, the single-family homes have more of a privacy impact on each other than the multifamily residential development. And what I will note is, in many cases, for these single-family residences, they're closer to each other than these 2-story multifamily residential buildings are or will be to the single-family residences. They're abutting the rear yard, and you have a little bit of distance between that, between the residential buildings that are proposed and the property line, the backyard, and the single-family residences.
Thank you.
And thank you for my patience in getting a visual of this. So when you do the wall and the shrubbery, it's not going to create an alleyway between the residential backyard and the wall, correct?
When you say alleyway, are we talking an alleyway from Sunset or an alleyway between the projects?
Right. So like if you, because I know that there's going to be on that south end, there's going to be a wall, and then there's going to be trees, or I don't know if it's trees behind the backyards of the residents and then a wall. And I just wanted to get a visual and make sure that we're not creating a walk-through nook for people. Do you get what I'm saying? I
do, and I'm going to just go back to an earlier part of the presentation and the slide here. There's the project is going to be entirely enclosed by fencing. So as far as if there's a concern that people from Sunset Avenue or East Tabor are going to have a cross through, that won't be the case with this project.
Okay, so then the shrubbery that you're going to put up will be close enough to the residential backyards to where it'll prevent a walk-through between the residential backyards and the wall of the apartment.
There will be a walkway adjacent to the landscaping at the southern end of the project site, and that's to allow for good circulation for the people that are going to live in this development. As far as any internal connections between the residential development that's proposed and the single-family residences, there will be no connection because there'll be a wall that will be running continuously down the southern property line.
Okay. And what's the rental price point for this project? Do we know how much? Is any of it going to be subsidized or?
The only thing I know at this point, and I think it's a question that the applicant team may be better suited to answer, but it's going to be a market rate development. So whatever the current lease rates are for apartments, that's what will likely be the case.
Thank you.
I do have a question, either for you, Mr. Atkinson, or Mr. Feinstein. Because this isn't the high density, then there's no requirement for affordable housing. Is that correct? Or can you explain it again for us, or for me?
So.
Thank you.
Under the city's codes and requirements, there, as far as I know, there's no place where affordability is mandatory. But what I will say is within this particular zoning district, the RM zoning district, we have in the past imposed affordability requirements as a part of a use permit, if there's a use permit required for the project. Use permits are required for detached housing in this particular zoning district. So the city's always looked at the RM zoning district as this zoning district where we can either get more dense multifamily, which is what we see here, dense up to 15 units per acre, or lower density down towards the 8 unit per acre that's more single family. But because multifamily tends to be more affordable, we've always wanted to see that if you do build at the lower end, where we have some control through the use permit, that there is affordability built in. And so we typically require a 10% affordability requirement on detached housing in this zoning district as a condition of the use permit. Because this is allowed by right in the RM zone, there's no use permit, and because it's denser in multifamily, where we typically assume this is going to be more affordable than a single-family home, the city, first of all, doesn't have the authority to impose, if it's just a private property owner developing their property and not seeking any subsidies or anything, we don't have the ability to mandate that. But because it's higher density than a typical single family, we do expect that the cost to rent these would be lower, so.
Thank you, sir.
Any other commissioner questions,
Oh,
comments?
one more, switching gears a lot, actually. Is there any infrastructure in this for EV charging systems?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that if state law requires that there be the infrastructure for EV charging stations, then that would be required as part of the building permit process.
But we don't place that on any of our current building standards for the city of Fairfield, is that correct?
We defer to the state. The state will have requirements that require certain like energy and efficient improvements. In this particular case, if the state requires EV charging stations for this project, then that would be a requirement during the building permit phase.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments? Okay, now I will open up the public hearing session. And it looks like I have one speaker card. We're looking at Brent Little.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name's Brent Little, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Red Tail Multifamily Land Development. And before I answer your questions and tell you a little bit more about the project, I first want to thank Jonathan and all of staff, first for a comprehensive presentation, and second for all the collaboration along the way. It's been very helpful, and we made our first submittal almost a year ago. And so there's been a lot of interaction with staff throughout the process, and it's been a very positive experience for all of us. So thank you very much. So let me first tell you a little bit about who Red Tail is. Red Tail is a fully integrated multifamily land development firm. And what that means is we have our own in-house planning, design, construction, and then also we manage our own units. And we're a coast-to-coast operation. Our nearest office here is in San Francisco. We have 3 projects nearby. We recently broke ground on a new project in Sassoon, and then another one in Vacaville, and then we have one in Vacaville in design now. So we're very invested in this marketplace and feel very strongly. But what helps us in being a fully integrated firm is it gives us a lot of resources to pull on and draw from. And so what we're able to do is we're able to talk to our residents and we're able to talk to the property managers and get an idea from them as to what's working and what amenities they'd like to see. And so that helps us along the way, along the design path, so that we know that we're implementing the right design and one that will be received well in the marketplace. We're really pleased to be here, though, tonight and excited for the project because this is a unique product. This isn't a typical apartment project. This is really more of a townhouse type of model. And I don't know if it read that way in the packets, but these are larger units. They're all either 2 or 3 bedroom units. Many of the units have flex space or home office space built into them. They have direct access to the garages, to a 2-car enclosed garage. So we have a number of different amenities like that, but what we see this particular design as being is a real stepping stone for young families in the community that want to stay here. They're probably already residents of the community, and this is the first step for them before they move into home ownership. And that's one of the reasons why we've made these larger units to allow for families. There's also a couple other things I'd like to point out about the project. We've carefully designed a lot of the amenities. So we have a real resort quality pool and a community recreation space there. Again, that was one of the things working with our property management team that we were able to program. The initial design of it was a smaller fitness room, and I don't know, because of COVID or what, that suddenly became an important thing, the home office, fitness that you can access. And so we see that as a trend, and so that fitness room got bigger. In addition to that, we have a barbecue area and a tot lot, and then other common area and open spaces. But throughout the community, we have a system of paseos that go through the buildings and connect the courtyards and open spaces to one another. And those will obviously be robustly landscaped. And I did want to point out on the wall that you folks talked about earlier, there will be a substantial amount of landscaping, not just along that wall, but all along the perimeter of the project as well. So, in addition to the design features for the project, we feel that there's a number of community benefits that are probably worth noting too. One of them, of course, is the unique design, but the other are some of the improvements that we're going to be doing around the perimeter of the project, which include reducing the overhead power lines, both on Tabor and Sunset, doing some off-site improvements to the street and roadways around there. And we see all those collectively, all those off-site improvements as helping to maintain the community that we're moving into. Lastly, I just wanted to point out that, as Jonathan mentioned, the project does conform to the general plan. And that was one of the things when we first started this whole design process over a year ago, we start out with the general plan. What does the general plan say? What are the policies, goals of the general plan? And I know in his staff report he listed a number of them, and I won't go into that again, but it was a starting point for us to make sure that the project that we're designing does comply with the general plan. actually, I said lastly, but I do have, before I answer and address some of the questions, we do have one additional request we'd like to make tonight, and that's some clarification on one of the conditions of approval. And Jonathan and I had talked at length about this, and he can confirm what I'm requesting and the city's position. Condition 1.1B. It calls for a smooth stucco finish to the buildings, and that's a vague term because a smooth finish could be, there is technically a smooth finish, there's a Santa Barbara finish, and there is a hand float finish, and that's what we would like to do. We understand that what the community doesn't want to see is a rough sand textured finish, or there's a number of different other types of stucco finishes, but we understand that that isn't what's wanted. So we would like to make the request that that condition be clarified, that it be a 2030 hand float finish. And then I don't know that it's really worth dwelling on, but I did want to point out a Public Works condition that we're okay with it, but we do feel like it's a little contradictory, and that's under storm drainage. It's conditions 10 and 11. So 10 is the condition, the way the project's designed. And just to elaborate a little bit more on it and the drainage feature that we have the benefit that the channel, Laurel Channel, is right by us. And so we've designed the project in such a way that we're actually reducing some of the flow off-site, and we're capturing it in a bioretention basin, which is that green triangle up there. And then that will, from there, from the biobasin, it settles and percolates into the groundwater, cleans the water, and then it's discharged into the channel. And we're pursuing the appropriate permits for that with the Army Corps and the Flood Board as well. But that's how the design works. Condition 10 is the correct condition. That's how it is. Condition 11 speaks to if we're connecting to the city line. We don't anticipate doing that. We're also okay if the condition stays in there since we're not doing it. But just for the record, we wanted to point out that that isn't the way the project's designed. So our only request is that 1.1B be clarified to a 2030 hand float finish. And then I wanted to try and touch on some of the questions and discussion that you folks had, and then I'm open to what other questions you might have. First, the timing. So from the time that the project gets approved and, just working it through, that'll happen sometime this year. We anticipate that we'll be processing and designing our construction documents and final engineering for the next, for the first and second quarter of 2023. And then we'll submit them to the city, and then we'll go back and forth with the city on plan check corrections, and that process will probably take 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. So we'll go through that, and then our expectation is we'll be breaking ground in 2024. And just to follow up a little bit more on the wall. So our thinking initially, 5 to 6 feet, we totally get it. That's perfectly acceptable. Going above 6 feet, we felt wasn't necessary because we actually have a greater setback along that side than's required. So if you look at where the building positions are, I think it's 25 feet, and the side yard setback by code is 15 feet. So we're 10 feet beyond what's required. In addition to that, we've orientated those buildings, and that's the two-story element there. We've orientated them so that they're there are less openings along that second story looking out into the people's backyards. So it's more front to back loaded there. And then one other concern about the going above 6 feet is, it's kind of be careful what you ask for. You want the sound, you want the privacy, and then all of a sudden you have a giant wall in your backyard, and sometimes that isn't as attractive either. So we're comfortable with the 6 feet and prepared to go forward with that. I think I answered your comments about the flood basin, but I'm happy to address that any more. And our civil engineer is here with me as well, if you have any other additional questions. And then lastly, the units are market rate units. The firm does affordable housing. We have numerous affordable housing projects we're working on right now where they're predominantly a mix of affordable and market rate, but it's a meaningful amount of affordable housing. For this product, we felt like the affordability has to be a balance. You do affordable here, then the units over here have to help carry those units. And that isn't what we wanted to see. We wanted to see the balance of product type because we really felt like the demographic, the family demographic that we're appealing to with these 2 and 3 bedroom units, we want to keep the price point at a more reasonable price point, and doing affordable would throw that out of balance. Some people get a better rate than others, and so that's our thought on there. But certainly, we're very adept at doing affordable housing and are champions of it. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Commissioners?
I just have one to clarify, and excuse me, I'm a little green. When you say, making it affordable and what's reasonable, because I know what market rate is, but I also know sometimes when you have more amenities, it costs a little more because it is reasonable because you have more amenities. So I'm just trying to get a clearer picture when you say reasonable and affordable. Are we talking about in comparison to the market or in comparison to the market of places that look like this?
Well, I totally understand what you're saying because the amenities, we're really happy with the amenities, and we think that it's going to provide, it's going to be an eye catcher from our perspective. And I think that's what's going to appeal to the families. But for us, our real focus is workforce housing. And we feel like we need to make these affordable to that workforce marketplace because quite frankly, we don't want to build a $40 million apartment project and then not be able to lease it. It's important for us to get the market right. I don't know what the rates are right now, so I can't give them to you, but I can tell you that is where we're hitting it at, is we believe this is workforce and families. Sure thing.
And I had just one more question. With the hand flow finish, what makes that so superior?
What makes it what?
The hand flow finish.
Yeah, it's the hand float finish. It's a smooth finish as well, insofar as you don't have, like with typical stucco, they blow it on or they blow it on and knock it down is what they usually do with the most typical. This is troweled on, and it doesn't have the undulation.
Okay.
But it applies easier than the smooth. The smooth and the Santa Barbara are extremely labor intensive. You have to literally burnish it in with a steel trowel, so it's a lot more expensive.
Okay.
Oh, and I'm sorry, if I could add one other thing to that, one other comment, the reason why the Santa Barbara or smooth finish, we feel just technically wouldn't work on these buildings. These are big buildings, and for us to do a smooth finish on it, you'd have to do one of two things. Really, you'd have to add a lot of expansion joints, and sometimes you see they'll put metal strips in to control the cracking, because that's the real issue with smooth stucco is it cracks, because as the buildings settle, it cracks, and these are big buildings. So we just, from a constructability and maintenance standpoint, we didn't think that would be the right thing to do.
Thank you.
So just a comment, I'm guessing that the finish you're after will actually help with noise a little bit as well, or not really?
I don't think it wouldn't be any different than the other. I think they're all kind of equal, even the ones that are maybe a thicker, they're probably equal.
I was thinking along the lines of a rougher finish, absorbs sound
Yeah,
a little
right,
more. But
yeah.
Any other commissioner comments?
Yes. My question is, with the more development, more housing, and more EV vehicles, are we doing anything with the solar panels for each and every apartment you are building?
I believe that these units are solar ready, and I apologize, and I can get back to you and answer that question. I should know that, but I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm pretty certain that they are either solar ready or there are actual panels that are going on. And I'm sure somebody's from our design team is going to text me, and if they do,
Thank you.
I'll tell you.
You probably have not gotten to the point of speccing the trees, or has that been discussed yet? And I take your point, if you go 6, 8, 10, then are you getting a big monolith? So that's a valid point. I think the trees can be a mitigating aspect to that as well. And that's why I'm curious as to what those trees will be, and it may be too premature at this point.
We do have a preliminary landscape plan that's part of the packet. If you give me a moment, I can actually pull the preliminary landscape plan just to identify the types of trees that are proposed along that southern property line.
I could be wrong, but I know in commercial developments, there's a requirement on the state level for EV charging stations. I don't know if that's applicable here or not.
Yeah, I don't have the answer for that. What we can do, at the moment, whatever the codes are that the city requires is what will be imposed on this project. Staff can come back at a subsequent meeting and give you some information about what the requirements are.
I can tell you on our other projects, we do have EV charging. We have quite a few, just thinking of one of our other projects, we have quite a few. But usually they're designated on the plan. And so it could be in the building design that the EV charging is inside those as opposed to being in the common spaces. That's probably what it is. That's also maybe a more economical way to do it. But all our projects have EV charging. In this day and age, that's, we're heading that way, so, you better put them in.
Another good reason for the solar, so.
Yeah, right.
You can combine that as well.
I just have one more question. You said that you have, 3 other projects going on?
Right.
So you'll have enough manpower to get all this stuff done?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the timing will be such that at least the other 2 projects will be moving a little bit, a year to 2 years ahead of those. Yeah.
Okay.
I did want to note for Commissioner Matthews, so along the southern property line, these trees are identified as community trees. So there's a palette of tree species that this would include. This would include, I'll say for the record, Marina strawberry tree, gold medallion tree, Australian willow, thornless honey locust, Chinese flame tree, and silver linden. So that would be these the accent trees along the southern property line.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, do we have any more on the public line?
Yeah, do we have any participants by Zoom who wish to speak?
Seeing none, I will
we
now
have no
close the
Zoom
public
comments.
hearing and turn it back.
Thank you very much.
No, I'm sorry. I will now close all comments in the public, and now we'll have a motion to approve PC.
Before you turn it over to the commission for any deliberations, I think we should probably respond to just give you some insight on the request on the condition for the finish, if we may.
Yes. So I just want to state that Planning Division staff is comfortable with the changes recommended by the applicant for condition 1.1B as far as the stucco finish goes. So the applicant recommended that this condition be changed to include a 2030 hand finish, hand floated, and staff would, be supportive of that change.
Gotcha. Do the commissioners have any further comments on the conditions?
I'll just comment that I think this is a fantastic development, and that we're taking fallow land and making workforce housing that's desperately needed. It'll be very attractive. I'm very impressed by it. Quality developer, and that's all I have to say.
I would concur with Commissioner Matthews.
I also wanted to add that I think it is a really high-quality project. I like the term workforce housing. That's really exciting to hear. I like that it's going to have more space. The only thing that, just going forward in the future for us as commissioners is I'm thinking about the presentation that happened a couple weeks ago about, I believe it's pronounced RENA. And I know that that means that we are designating space for more affordable housing, but I'm just bearing in mind that we have already met, we've more than met our requirement for, standard income levels. And I mean, I'm really excited about bringing some economic diversity to this particular area as well, but I'm just bearing in mind that this is yet another project that is not going to meet our affordable housing criteria. So while we're designating space, we're not really hitting that goal just yet.
I just want to concur with the commissioner that I don't think we should view it as a trade-off if we have new developments and a section is designated for affordable housing and the others isn't, that we really shouldn't look at that it sounds almost punitive to say that the market rate tenants are paying for the affordable housing rate. I don't think that's a fair way of assessing it, in my opinion. And I do think we need more affordable housing. I am, however, very excited about this project, especially using existing land and turning it into something for our residents. I think that's very important for our families in having different type of housing opportunities. But just coming off of our housing element meeting, it's clear that we need more affordable housing. So we have to be creative in how we're going to achieve those goals.
Do I have a motion to approve Resolution PC 22.10 pertaining to item A?
I move to approve resolution number PC 2022-10 with the 1.1B amendment to clarify the 2030 hand flow finish.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I do the second.
Mr. Feinstein, will you conduct the roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Paul,
Yes.
Commissioner Greavy,
Yes.
Commissioner Werblin,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthews,
Yes.
Commissioner Cruzen is absent this evening, Commissioner Childs.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Now, our next item will be the 2022 zoning ordinance amendments. And our staff person is Jesse Hernandez.
Good evening, Commissioners. Today I will be presenting a number of zoning ordinance amendments for your consideration. At least once a year, planning staff reviews and recommends revisions to the Fairfield zoning ordinance. These revisions keep the zoning code up to date with current planning practice, state law, and city policy goals, and correct inadvertent errors and omissions. Today, we have 22 proposed amendments. 1100 Texas Street was identified as CD in the heart of Fairfield's specific plan, but inadvertently zoned as public facilities, or PF. Staff recommends correcting this inadvertent zoning by rezoning 1100 Texas as HD, which is the equivalent to the CD zone in the specific plan. Duets, which are attached units with a property line separating them, are currently conditionally permitted in the residential low-density or RL zoning district. Staff recommends removing duets as a conditionally permitted use in the RL district, as this use does not align with the desired level of density. The amendment is consistent with existing regulations for the RL and RVL districts, which require side setbacks greater than 0. In the third amendment, staff recommend adding a note to the additional regulations column in Table 25-1. The note would be added to boarding houses large and boarding houses small to direct readers to pertinent sections of the zoning ordinance that provide further regulations on these land uses. Duets are currently not permitted in the residential very low or RVL zoning district. However, this is not currently indicated in Table 25-1. Staff recommend adding a dash to this table to indicate that duets are not permitted in the RVL zoning district to clarify and correct an inadvertent omission. Mini storage is conditionally permitted in the residential medium density or RM and the residential high density or RH zoning districts. Staff recommend removing mini storage as a conditionally permitted use in the RM and RH zoning districts, as this use does not support the city's vision for walkable and complete neighborhoods with accessible amenities and services such as grocery stores, restaurants, retail shops, and public facilities. Park playground is not currently permitted in the residential very high density or RVH zoning district. Staff recommends permitting park playground in the RVH district as they are critical community amenities for all residents and neighborhoods, particularly for high-density neighborhoods in which residents may lack private open space such as backyards. In the seventh amendment, staff recommends removing the removed note in Table 25-1, renumbering the notes in chronological order, and updating the additional regulations column to reflect the newly renumbered notes. This would clean up Table 25-1 and eliminate unnecessary information. Small lot development regulations in Table 25-5 currently requires common open space totaling 5% of net project area. Recent projects have provided unusable common open space without any amenities, including counting detention basins and stormwater features towards open space requirements. Learning from these projects, staff recommends reducing the common open space requirement to total 2% of net project area, requiring common open space to provide one or more active recreational amenities, and excluding detention basins and stormwater quality features from being counted towards open space requirements, unless usable for active recreational purposes. I'd like to highlight our reasoning for reducing the requirement from 5% of total project area to 2%. When this regulation was written, it did not account for stormwater quality requirements. Staff believes that these amendments would set a standard for usable common open space. Projects will still have to provide additional stormwater quality features, which are currently counted towards common open space. On this slide, I have provided two examples of existing projects. Both projects provide just under 2% of common open space that has been improved with recreational amenities. If you look at the right-hand image, you can see an improved common open space with recreational amenities. And just below, you can see an unimproved open space. So this is an example of how a 2% improved common open space would be developed in addition to other unimproved open spaces. For the 9th edit, currently replacement parking is required for garage conversion ADUs, which conflicts with state law. Under state law, cities cannot require replacement parking for ADU garage conversions. And so staff recommend that we update the text to clearly permit conversions without replacing displaced parking. The existing ADU text explicitly permits one ADU on properties with single-family dwellings, duplexes, duets, or multifamily dwellings. Under state law, one detached ADU and one JADU or one ADU is permitted. Staff recommends revising the text to clearly permit one detached ADU and one JADU or one ADU in accordance with state law. The boarding houses section is currently located within section 25.32 specific use regulations. Staff recommends relocating the boarding houses section to section 25.20 residential zoning districts, as boarding houses are a residential use and more relevant to the residential zoning districts section. Co-working spaces are defined as facilities containing desks or other workspaces with shared business resources. These spaces are similar in character and use to office spaces, prohibiting fabrication tools in excess of what is customary within a typical office environment. Due to the similar use and character of co-working spaces to office spaces, staff recommends permitting co-working spaces in all commercial zones which permit offices, including the neighborhood commercial, community commercial, thoroughfare commercial, service commercial, mixed commercial, office commercial, and regional commercial zoning districts. Tasting rooms are not currently permitted in any commercial district. Staff recommends relaxing these standards to permit and conditionally permit tasting rooms in appropriate commercial zoning districts, such as those which conditionally permit bars. Staff recommends permitting tasting rooms in the thoroughfare commercial, community commercial, and regional commercial zoning districts, and conditionally permitting tasting rooms in the office commercial district. Temporary uses and events are temporary commercial activities such as Christmas tree lots and pumpkin patches, and are currently permitted in commercial districts throughout the city. Staff recommends adding Ps to Table 25-9 to indicate that temporary uses and events are permitted in these districts and correct an inadvertent omission. The open space requirements for mixed-use development currently requires 200 square feet of common open space per dwelling unit. Staff proposes reducing the requirement from 200 square feet of common open space per dwelling unit to 100 square feet, and strengthening these requirements to additionally require private open spaces to provide passive or active recreation and community amenities, such as barbecues, outdoor gym equipment, or play structures, as well as minimum dimensions of 15 by 15 feet. The purpose of these amendments are to ensure that these private common open spaces are usable, similar to the requirements for residential multifamily development. This recommendation is in response to recently approved mixed-use projects, which provided small and fragmented open space areas in unsuitable locations, such as around trash enclosures. At the time, we didn't have the leverage in the zoning ordinance to require larger and improved open spaces. I'd also like to add that the reason we're proposing a reduction in the square feet of required open space per unit is because we looked at recent projects and we noticed that 200 square feet of common open space effectively required approximately 15% of the total project area for one of the projects we looked at. We wanted to reduce that to encourage or to attain the desired urban character and dense character of a mixed-use development. Parking facility non-residential is currently permitted by right in the West Texas Street, or HWT, and Transit-Oriented Development, or HTD, zoning districts. Staff recommends conditionally permitting this use in the HWT and HTD zoning districts, as it does not align with the city's vision for pedestrian and transit-oriented development in these zoning districts, and should be considered on a case-by-case basis. Tattoo parlors are currently only conditionally permitted in the West Texas Street or HWT zoning district in the heart of Fairfield. Staff recommends relaxing these standards and permitting tattoo parlors in the HWT, mixed-use office, and transit-oriented development district zoning districts. Staff is not concerned with the potential for overconcentration, as the market will only support so many tattoo parlors in the heart of Fairfield's specific plan area. The heart of Fairfield residential single-family side yard setback is currently 5 feet. Staff recommends reducing the HR single-family side yard setback to either 0 feet minimum, 4 feet total, or as necessary to provide private open space, with a note that the interior side yard setback may be reduced to 3 feet for structures complying with all applicable Uniform Building Code regulations. This proposed reduced setback is consistent with the existing setbacks for the higher density residential zoning districts, including the low, medium, and high density residential zoning districts. This amendment supports the city's vision for dense urban development for the HR zoning district. The current multi-residential parking standards in the West Texas Street, or HWT, zoning district requires 1 to 2 parking spaces per unit. Consistent with parking standards for the residential low, medium density, and high density, and very high density zoning districts. Staff recommends reducing the HWT parking standard to 1 1/3 parking spaces per unit for multifamily buildings and 1 space per unit for mixed-use buildings, consistent with other Heart of Fairfield zoning districts, to support the Heart of Fairfield specific plan's vision for dense urban development in the HWT district. The Industrial Business Park District is intended for business and industrial parks and campus-like settings. Permitted uses include administrative and professional offices, research and development parks, and light manufacturing. Co-working spaces are not currently permitted. Staff recommends permitting co-working spaces in the IBP district, as this use aligns with the intent of the district and is compatible with the permitted uses. The deadline for filing an interim use permit application for non-conforming uses in the train station specific plan area is approaching. Staff recommends extending the deadline to 1 year after the effective date of this ordinance to support property and business owners of non-conforming uses who are trying to comply with the zoning ordinance. Lastly, ground and upper floor transparency are currently required for buildings in the Heart of Fairfield zoning districts. Transparency is defined in section 25.23.3 General Development Regulations, but not in the land use definition section. Staff recommends adding the existing a revised definition for transparency to the land use definition section. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner comments?
I just have one little question. So is it that the tattoo parlors aren't allowed just in that one particular area? Because I know further up West Texas they are.
I believe that's correct. I would need to reference our zoning ordinance. I can speak to within the heart of Fairfield specific plan area. They are currently only permitted in the they're conditionally permitted in the HWT zoning district, and they are not permitted in any of the other heart of Fairfield zoning districts.
Thank you. Just curious about that. It's weird.
Okay, I have a question, and you know the question. So if you could go back to the slide that actually showed those two little housing developments. So I have no idea. I was actually trying to count how many houses, and that looks like those are duplexes there. We've got essentially the size, if I'm reading this or looking at the right-hand slide, it looks like we've got about the same amount of space as two duplexes there, or maybe two lots. Okay. If we go to 2%, if we use that, and as I said to you earlier today, if we use a 10-acre parcel, just to make it somewhat easy to understand, and we have 43,560 square feet to an acre, and we have 10 acres, that means we've got 435,650, okay? 2% of that is 8,712 square feet. On a 10-acre parcel, even as I said earlier, using 7 homes to a lot, or to an acre, that is not much space for all of the children and adults and dogs, et cetera, that need to use that quote-unquote open space. 8,000 square feet is smaller than the lot that I live on. So I understand what you're trying to achieve, but I'm wondering if, and I'm no math expert, but I'm wondering if we need, which would probably really booger up the works, needs to be on a sliding scale so that, you know, I just want to be able to, I want to feel assured that kids, adults, dogs, cats have a place to go when we're packing more houses in less area, that they have something that they can get to quickly, easily, comfortably, and enjoy. And I just don't see that if you're using 8,000 square feet for 50 homes. I just don't see that happening. It's just a comment. We've packed a lot. You've packed a lot into here to clean up. It's starting to look an awful lot like one of our assemblymen packing a bunch of programs together and saying, pass it all. But anyway, I want it on the record that I just don't think that this is appropriate.
Planning division staff believe that 5% of the total project area is too much. We came up with the 2% figure by looking at what we thought of as successful projects. So looking at those projects, we calculated how large the total project area was and how large the common open spaces were, and that's how we arrived at the 2% figure. I mentioned this in my presentation, but I wanted to reiterate that in addition to this common open space, there will also be stormwater features that will effectively provide additional open space. Those stormwater features cannot be counted towards the common open space unless they are improved and usable.
And I'll add a couple of things. So right now, there's a 5% requirement. So if you're building one of these subdivisions, you have to, 5% of that site has to be what's called common open space, which is really almost any just green space on the site. What's happened when we originally put that regulation in place, there were no requirements for stormwater treatment facilities. Now we have that. The way the regulations read currently, you can count all the stormwater facilities towards that 5%. What we've never had is a requirement for any sort of usable park space. We've had some developers who have chosen to put it in as an amenity, but our code didn't require it. So staff agrees with you that we absolutely believe that these little small subdivisions where the yards are smaller and smaller and smaller need to have something really right close in proximity like this. So the impetus for this change was, first of all, to make sure that we are getting amenities in our small lot subdivisions. And so then was the question, well, how much is appropriate? We took a look at two of the very few neighborhoods that actually did provide them. That was the two that you see here, and 2% is about what that figure was. The developers will still be required to put in all their stormwater. So what you'll likely be ending up with is you'll have roughly 3% probably is the stormwater facility. And now we're at least getting, with this proposal, some amenities in the project. If the commission feels that, these examples that we've shown here aren't sufficient, that's an example of what roughly 2% is. If you think it should be more, you can go 3%, 4%. I'd be careful not to go all the way up at 5 because they still have to put in all the stormwater as well as meet density requirements. And we're just a little concerned that if you start requiring too much in the way of usable open space requirements on top of the stormwater, they're going to have trouble meeting some of the density requirements. So we thought this was a good starting point, but we certainly understand if the commission feels that more amenities in these neighborhoods is appropriate, and some figure bigger than 2%, whether it's 3%, 4%, on the other side, when we work with developers, we may find we have some challenges with them. They'll have to get a little more creative. But if the commission does wish a higher figure, you're certainly welcome to recommend that. So, my 2 cents on that subject.
And don't misunderstand me. I've pretty much everyone here doesn't really know. Dave maybe does, but I've happened to live a lot of places, and I really think that Fairfield has done a remarkable job of offering some really spectacular open spaces. The only one that I've ever lived in that was better was Flagstaff, Arizona. So that's not my point, and I'm truly sensitive to the needs and our objectives going forward to make housing more affordable, and the only way we can do that is help builders get to that point. I'm just really sensitive to people having a place to let off a little steam. So,
Any other commissioner comments?
Yes, I do have a question on accessory dwelling units. And there are two kinds. One is accessory dwelling unit, the other is junior accessory dwelling units. And can you tell what percentage of the lot they can add on to their existing unit? Say, if some lot is 1,500 square feet, they already have 800 square feet unit there. So what percent out of other, can they add another 600, 700 accessory or additional unit in that property?
The city of Fairfield complies with state housing law. JADUs must be contained within the existing building footprint. So a JADU would not add to the building footprint of the lot. Let's see, for an ADU, I believe it's either 1,500 square feet or 50% of the existing dwelling, whichever is less. Dave, is that correct?
If that's not correct, it's very close. It's somewhere in that general vicinity. So you can build a pretty reasonably sized detached unit as an accessory dwelling unit on your property.
And still they do have to have a front yard and backyard, or there's no conditions on that?
So there are setback requirements. I believe the setback requirements are the same for the main house for the front, so however far back off the street that they have to be. The side setbacks, I think, are 4 feet. And that's state law. State law has told us that we can't require them to be any farther off the property line than 4 feet, and so that's where we set our code.
And then one more question. When we have garage conversions, do we not require any replacement parking for that? Then they're going to be parking all their cars by the road, and it's going to be like on the one side when we do a new development, we are asking them they have to have enough parking, and the other side we are giving them they can convert the garage to a residential unit, and then they should be any parking replacement. So why is it two standards?
The state has determined that ADUs do not need dedicated on-site parking. This amendment is updating text to comply with state law. That's correct if a single-family home converts their garage into a JADU, they are losing those dedicated on-site parking spaces.
Yeah, and we recognize the comments of, the challenges that poses for parking. If that's, if you believe that that's problematic, the best I can tell you is the state has told us that we can't regulate that issue and that this is something that we have to allow. So we're just trying to make our own code compliant with state law.
So I saw that today, that, as a matter of fact, just today, Newsom signed it all into law, et cetera. Would the city have the right in new development, we can't do it with old, but with new development, that we require a parking structure per se with us, this is for you guys, the engineers, to try to find a way that we mitigate that parking on the street problem to a certain extent. Because if you build one single parking structure, it's certainly going to be cheaper than all of the parking that you would, garages, et cetera. I'm sure most of us go to the Bay Area, we go down streets where there's absolutely no parking, none. And I sure don't want to see Fairfield end up there. I understand the purpose, I understand the concept that we're trying to push ourselves, encourage ourselves to go towards more public transit, et cetera, but we also need to keep a clean city and one that is not cluttered and
Yeah, one thing I'll note is the city code, we can set parking standards in the city code for main housing units. And our standards today are for a minimum of one covered space, one uncovered space, so 2 spaces on the property, and then 1 space on the street within 200 feet. So you can think, for every single family house, we require 3 parking spaces. Typically, a single family house actually provides more than that. So most of the time, we're getting at least 4. So you'll get 2 in the driveway and 2 in the garage. So when the house, when they actually build the house, that's what we get. They also get 1 on the street. So, but we typically get at least 1 more parking space than the city code allows. So that's one piece of information I'll share. The other side of that is, and I'm just looking down the road, the state is getting, the state's focused on ADU issues. The state is also starting to focus on parking issues. And there's a general consensus, I think, from a lot of the proposed legislation that I've seen in discussion of possible legislation, that we're going to be seeing increased prohibitions on us, the city level, in how much parking we can require. So we can have the conversation today about what's possible, but I will caution that, I'm looking in the crystal ball. I think we're going to get to a point sooner rather than later where we are limited in how much parking we can require.
thank you.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to comment about the 2%. That was, of reading all of the amendments, that was the one that I had some concerns with. It seemed like such a significant reduction, and I appreciate, wanting to work with builders and wanting housing that we desperately need, but I'm thinking that number is a little small.
Okay. Any other comments?
Maybe one more, I'm sorry. So the detention basins, do we have an ordinance that requires that they're mowed and that they can be used like for a soccer field or baseball or something like that? Because that would really help, with, if it was truly usable. Not that it's just a hole in the ground that gets really rutted up and the kids can't hardly go out there and play anyway. That it was maybe maintained, much like our parks are.
Yeah, we don't have an ordinance that addresses how you design it for usability. We have requirements for depending on how much hardscape there is on a development, how much water quality feature has to be constructed, but there is not language that says a certain percentage of it or how much of it has to be designed to be usable. Typically, they're not. If you've seen them, they are typically, you get detention basins, which are much larger. Those are actually a different kind of facility. We often don't get those in these small lot subdivisions, but what we do get are little swales, little channels that allow the water that runs off to filter into the ground. We do sometimes get larger facilities that aren't true basins. The basins are typically a whole different category of infrastructure. But it is possible, particularly if, so this 2% figure was set so that you have some usable open space with the idea that probably that remaining 3 that they're already required to do will become the stormwater. If the commission says, you know what, we want 3% or 4%, that could direct the developers to start looking at how do we make the stormwater quality features also more usable. Build them a little bit bigger, wider. I can't promise that. I think the developers would get a bit creative if they were forced to. But I can anticipate that we might come across some challenges where they just demonstrate that it's not feasible to design them in that way. But like I say, the commission is certainly welcome if you want a different figure, to propose a different figure.
Any other comments? Okay. I will now open the public hearing, and I do have one speaker card, and it's, this is Jasmine. Okay, Singh, I want to make sure I pronounce it right. Jasmine Singh, thank you.
All right, absolutely. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I actually just had one clarifying question. If the changes today are approved, when do they go into effect? And when can members of the public have access to this newly revised zoning update?
So the course of action here is the Planning Commission is being asked to make a recommendation tonight to the City Council. Assuming the Commission makes that recommendation tonight, the project would be scheduled to go in front of the City Council, and it's based on our schedule, most likely late October or early November. I don't know if Jesse, do you know when it would be scheduled?
We're currently scheduled for the first reading to happen on November 15th. And then the second city council meeting would be December 6th.
Yeah, so this is an ordinance. Ordinances require 2 meetings for the city council to review and take action. So they take action likely by early December. And then the code goes into effect 30 days from that. So you'd be looking right around the first of the year, somewhere right around that time, that this would all go into effect.
First of the year. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Do we have any speakers via Zoom?
There is no speech in the Zoom.
Sounds like we have no speakers.
Oh, okay. So, do I have a motion to approve Resolution PC 2211 pertaining to item B?
Before we do that, may I ask a question to Mr. City Attorney or Mr. Feinstein? If we wanted to make a recommendation to increase the 2% to a different number, what is the protocol, please?
Yeah, as a part of your motion, you'd move, if you're comfortable with everything else and just want to see a different number, you'd make a motion to approve the resolution with the recommendation that the usable open space percent be a number that you'd like to recommend, and see if somebody makes a second.
Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that topic? We've got 5% that does not include stormwater. 2% that does, that it's separate. So is there a metric that you have that would help us understand typically how much is that storm water? So what is the incremental difference is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I think the best example is, and Jesse, if you can go back to, so over on the right, that project, and it's cut off a little bit. There are two main areas of stormwater treatment. One is along the left side of that graphic, and it's cut off sort of by the edge of the image, and then there's a little bit of additional just below the little tot lot there, that square in the upper center. The lower half of that is also water quality. So this is a project that meets the 5%, and they were able to address the stormwater and had a little bit left over, and they voluntarily put in the little tot lot that's roughly 2%. So that's a project where they're at about maybe just a little over 5% of that site it would be what we currently identify as common open space. So currently, stormwater facilities do count towards the 5%. With this change, you still have to put in the stormwater, but we're not going to say you got to do 5%. We know they're going to do the stormwater, but it's requiring that at least 2% of that, today it's 5%, at least 2% is developed as something usable. Whereas currently our code doesn't require anything usable. If they do it, it's voluntary. So this gives us comfort that it's definitely feasible that you can achieve 2%, and I'm not going to have a whole lot of developer pushback. Oh, we just can't make it work. Well, we've got a couple of examples here where it does work. So it was a number that we felt was one that was achievable, that we didn't have to go do a whole lot of engagement and discussion and figure out, is this a workable figure? So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
What I hear you saying is that based with some equivocation, 2% plus stormwater equals 5% where there's no minimum.
Yeah, I have an example right here on the right where that was a workable figure, yes.
So I am truly sensitive to the builders and our objective of trying to get affordable housing, and this is all part of that matrix. If we choose to go with it as it is, with the 2%, it's been brought up, City Council's going to be looking at this, more eyes are going to look at this. What we do here tonight would not be the be-all, end-all, correct?
So if the planning, so you're not the final decision maker, that's correct. The City Council is the final decision maker, but we will share if you recommend something different, we will make sure to share that information and some of the thoughts behind that with the City Council.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't know if I can make the recommendation with Commissioner Evans out of the room. May I proceed, or? So I am going to make a recommendation for resolution number PC 2022-11 with the amendment for the open space requirement for small lot development to increase from 2% to 3%.
I'd like to second that.
Okay. Mr. Feinstein, will you take the roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Paul?
Yeah, I do. I do agree with most of the amendments, but I do keep my reservations on the garage conversions and then not providing any replacement parking. And other than that, I'll go for it. Yes, just for the rest of the amendments.
That's a yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Commissioner Greavy?
Yes.
Commissioner Warblin?
Yes.
Commissioner Evans?
No.
Commissioner Matthews?
Yes.
Commissioner Cruzen is absent, and Commissioner Childs?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay. And now we'll move on to Information and Communications Director's Report and Commissioner's comments.
Yeah, a couple of items for the commission. One is a little callback to our last meeting at which there was some discussion regarding the demand for commercial uses in Cordelia. And there's been some discussion and comments from the dais. And one of our speakers wanted to add some additional information and opinion that was shared with the Planning Commission that felt, I'd say that you don't need quite so many housing units to support more grocery stores. And so that comment was shared with the commission after the Planning Commission meeting was requested that be forwarded, so we did forward that. What we don't want to do is to leave this sort of a hanging issue with differing opinions. So staff's going to be doing some research and coming back and agendize for you some additional information. Actually go out and talk with some professionals on this topic and give you a sense of where, what is the calculus out there in the market for different kinds of retail and groceries, particularly grocery stores. So wanted to just let you know that that's an issue that we want to get some good information for you. Second, just want to let you know we do have an item pending for your next meeting. It will be an appeal of a staff approval. The zoning administrator approved a vehicle storage facility, and there is a condition that the applicant was not in favor of, and so they've appealed that to the Planning Commission. And so at your next meeting, you'll be taking up that appeal. My comments. Mr. Chair?
Okay. So no further comments. We are adjourned to our next meeting on October 12th, 2022.